Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, party people, it's Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 150 of Gridiron Grinder. And for tonight, we're going to kick things off with Name That Stadium, just like we always do. Then we're going to cover the news from this past week, kind of a short week since we're doing it on a Wednesday instead of a Friday. After that, we're going to keep going on the fantasy football trend here, and we're going to take a look at the fantasy football top 10 rankings by position and provide a little bit of commentary on them, our own review of them, whatever you want to call it. And then after that, last but not least, we'll close it off with question of the week. And so, yeah, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. We're under a flood warning here, but the sky looks good so far. So if you start getting a whole bunch of background noise, it means that, I'm getting rained out over here.
Yeah.
If it gets dark
Hopefully that just
abruptly,
holds off till afterwards. But I know, depending on your internet, your rain might cause a little bit of a issue.
yeah, hopefully the internet stays solid. I can do with the rain, but we don't want the show getting interfered with. Come on, Mother Nature. Okay, cool. Well, hey, bud, why don't you take that ball and run with it? Do a little name that stadium for us.
All right. So as you can see, this is the part of the show where I'm traveling around to various stadiums that host NFL games. And we haven't had any takers in a couple weeks again, which is disappointed. But first person to guess right, you'll get an extra special shout out. We'll have a bookmark. You can rewatch and rewatch it. Just put a guess out there. Like, come on. Sometimes these are really easy and nobody
Yeah.
guesses. And but last week I was in Washington, and the reason I chose Washington it probably had to do with the fact that as I was looking and I was researching for our sleepers last week, I felt like there were so many players on Washington that were like being way undervalued, and I think my
Okay.
biggest sleeper was like Sam Howell, like as I went through, which it happens to be the quarterback there in Washington, and so that's why I picked Washington.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember that you were high on him, and it'd be pretty cool if it worked out. So
Yeah,
nice to see those late round picks end up surprising and surprising to the upside is probably the right way to
yeah,
put it. So,
exactly.
all right, good stuff. Well, yeah, hopefully we get a taker, and yeah, let's shift it on over here, do a little recap of the past week, and so. I had very little news that I picked up on, partly because of the short week, and then also partly just because of the time of the year. But the one thing I guess I'll start off with is I saw just earlier today the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're coming out with a creamsicle throwback uniform, and I just wanted to see if you got to see any pictures of it and what your thoughts were, James.
I did get to see some pictures of it, and when I saw the pictures, I was like, oh, those look really familiar, and it's kind of like the old school, and I like the fact that they're doing it with the Lions game in Week 6, or that's when they're going to be wearing them,
Okay.
because of the fact that like that's like the old that was the NFC, was it the North or Central, that's what it was, the black and blue division, as
Yep.
Berman always
Yep.
referred to it. So I like that they're going kind of throwback for that game. I mean, maybe Detroit can wear their alternate uniforms or their throwback uniform of that game and just kind of have like an old school battle there. But I thought they looked pretty good. They looked basically how I remembered the Buccaneers back in the day growing up.
Nice. Okay. Well, yeah, because I only got to see one picture, and like the whole picture had like sort of like a taint to it, and so like I couldn't really get like a good grasp on how bright the uniforms were, and like I kind of like vaguely remember the old ones, and it's the same thing. It's like I'm like, well, I don't know if they were necessarily bright or if it was just really just that creamsicle orange color. And either way, I'm hoping that in the right light it looks good, and that the like I just said, I can't really judge it very well based off of the picture I saw. But, in general, I'm a big fan of the throwbacks. So, that's cool with
Yeah.
me.
So I saw it in the whatchamacallit. It was on the Buccaneers Twitter where they kind of threw like some old school images in there, and it was like a video, and then they had who was it? Mike Evans, Godwin, I forgot who else, um, in there with wearing the new creamsicle uniforms.
Okay.
Uh, so like yeah, they showed a lot of the old ones in the video and like kind of kept flashing back from like old school TV. I thought it was pretty well done. I'll shoot you the link.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah, thank you.
it's on the NFL.com article that they had the video in there.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, well, yeah, so then in other news, we were just talking, I think, last week a little bit about Alvin Kamara and sort of like the range of what could be happening with him from a fantasy standpoint, depending on his legal situation and a possible suspension. And it looks like there's, I don't know if necessarily, saying it's one step closer, but, it's moving forward. And so he has pled no contest to a misdemeanor charge, which is reduced from what the original charge was going to be. And so I think the general expectation is that that could only help him from like the NFL standpoint and any potential punishment towards him. He still absolutely could be suspended or punished in some kind of a way, but it seems like this is a better path than what he was on before.
Yeah, so he, as part of his plea agreement of pleading no contest, it he has to pay $100,000 in medical bills for well, this says alleged victim, but I think if he's paying
Pleading no
somebody,
contest, yeah.
pleading no contest for it, it's a victim. So I think you can remove alleged from there. But yeah, it was, I forget the exact charge. I want to say it was like criminal mischief or something like that. Like something that was just absolutely sounded way less than what actually happened. Way, way less. Like,
Okay.
um, let me see if I can find it real quick. What the charge actually was, uh, because it sounded so weird when I read it or heard it. Breach of peace.
Breach of peace.
Yes, he
I've not
pled
heard
no
that one
contest
before.
to a lesser misdemeanor charge of breach of peace.
Is that like what I mean what is it, like disturbing the peace? Breach of
Yeah,
peace?
kind of,
Okay.
kind of. So yeah, it's it sounds like it's nothing. Odds are the NFL will suspend him. Like even if he wasn't criminally charged, the NFL probably was going to suspend him for it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's like a normal employer, right? Like, just because you weren't convicted doesn't mean you can't still be punished by the company. Like they can always use the law as like their baseline, but go above and beyond that in how they treat you.
yeah, so like it's going to be because what is I just saw the wording and it's what he would be suspended under.
Okay.
Uh,
Like the conduct policy or whatever.
yeah, like the personal conduct policy. I forget exactly what it. There was wording that I saw in one of the articles I came across on it, but I'm not seeing which article that was anymore. Um, Either way, it's he probably will get suspended. I'm actually looking at it. I'm probably thinking it's going to be 2 games
Okay.
because I think it's going to be hard to say. Well, actually, there's a video. Um,
Yeah. I mean, that was like what was it, the Ray Rice thing? It was like
yeah,
you can't deny the video, and into the league, it was almost like we don't even care what happens with you legally. because we've seen the video and we know how bad it was.
Yeah, so here it is. It's the NFL, the league policy states it is not simply to avoid being found guilty of a crime. We are all held to a higher standard and must conduct ourselves in a way that is responsible, promotes the values of the NFL, and is lawful. Players convicted of a crime or subject to a disposition of a criminal proceeding are subject to discipline.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So even if you're found not guilty, you could be disciplined by the NFL, basically.
Yeah, and I get that. It's like you're a role model for all these people out there, especially young people, and you want them to always be put in the proper light so that you remain a good role model. And it's like a company not wanting an employee to do something that makes the company look bad. So,
Yeah, and actually looking at a little bit of the reporting again, I think it's going to be more than 2 games.
okay.
Because assault and battery is specifically spelled out in their conduct policy, where it lists assault and battery as a form of prohibited conduct in its official personal conduct policy, and says any player found to have engaged in that conduct could be subject to the discipline, even if there is no criminal conviction.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's quoting this ESPN article, and that leads me to believe that it's probably going to be more than 2 games because of the fact that they specifically list assault, which he pled to a lesser charge, but it stemmed from an assault charge.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. Yeah. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out then, because, every time one of these happens, we sort of get like a new reference point on how the league is going to treat it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like you can't write the rules to be so specific to everything. They kind of got to be vague because there's always so many circumstances. But you kind of like flesh it out as new things come in. And so that's all this is. It just gives us one more data point, so to speak.
Yeah, I was just going to want to take a look. So the last player for assault that wasn't domestic violence that was suspended. So Antonio Brown was suspended for 8 games.
Okay.
In 2020. And in 2019, Jaron Reed was suspended for 6 games.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then there was, I guess it was before that, was the Kareem Hunt one. That wasn't a domestic thing, was it? It was at a hotel, but it was with somebody that was not a part of their party that he got into the altercation.
Yeah. Kareem Hunt. Video hitting and kicking a woman at a hotel in Cleveland in February 2018. He was suspended. He was released by the Chiefs. He was suspended for 8 games.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, any last thoughts on that, or can I keep going here? Okay. All right. So I guess the NFL supplemental draft was this past week, James, and there were no players selected. From what I understand, there were only 2 guys that were eligible. And I think, was this the first one since COVID, or was there one last year? I know for like during COVID, they stopped doing it.
Well, it was the first one since 2019. So yeah,
Okay.
First one since COVID, because 2020 was COVID. Any team that would have made a pick in the supplemental draft would have had to have given up the corresponding round pick in the 2024 draft. So
Yeah.
It's no surprise that there's nobody was selected.
No, and it's rare, but you do get guys on occasion. And man, I'm trying to think of like one that's notable. Was Josh Gordon a supplemental pick with the Browns years ago? I mean, he's kind of like a big name guy because he had like one
Was he?
rocking year and then all of his off the field stuff. I probably have to
I don't.
Google it.
I'm gonna have to Google that. Josh Gordon. Let me see. He was.
Yeah, he was selected in the supplemental draft. Chris Carter, that's going back a ways, but Chris Carter was a supplemental pick. Yeah, so it tells me he was, but this one's just not, it's not telling me what round.
So
So,
Josh Gordon was in the 2012 supplemental draft. He was a second round pick by Cleveland.
yeah, that's like really high for the supplemental draft, but wow, 2012. It's hard to believe it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, in either case, it's scarcely utilized, but it is there for, I forget how it works exactly with these guys that they become eligible, but they missed the April draft, and however it works, it still gives them a shot to get in before the season starts. And, if you're a team, it's almost like you get to use some of that draft capital for next year and get a guy now. You're kind of like getting
Well,
a jump
see,
on the
but
game.
that's the thing with it though. Is now if they've passed through the supplemental draft, they're free agents. Any team that made a pick, blah blah blah. Both players can now sign with any team as undrafted free agents.
Gotcha. And still no
Yeah.
takers
So
as of yet.
yeah. Like one
I
of
think it was
them,
two wide receivers this year.
it was. It was Malachi Weidman and Milton Wright. Milton
Okay.
Wright was academically ineligible for 2022. He had 57 catches and 7 touchdowns in 2021. And Weidman, he in 2021 he had 12 touchdowns on 34 catches, but
Oh,
only caught 3 passes at Jackson State last year.
okay. But yeah, he was like clearly a red zone specialist.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the last piece of news that I had, James, was just a little note about Richard Sherman, the old Legion of Boom cornerback from Seattle. And, he was on that Super Bowl squad with the 49ers and bounced around a little bit. He has not played since 2021, and he made comments this past week that 2021 was likely his last year. Um, so he hasn't like officially retired, and even his comment was kind of vague, but like an indicator that he probably isn't coming back. To me, I think he'd be hard pressed to come back after being removed for this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, from what I remember, the last he was on the field, he was already basically like a shell of of his former self. And so,
Yeah.
typically guys don't just like take a year off and then all of a sudden like bounce back better. And so, but that's okay. I mean, the dude had a great career and now he's, you know, doing some stuff on the camera for people. So,
Yeah. I mean, he'll be fine. Like, I mean, he wasn't exactly lighting it up his last year, so it's
no.
not. I think he probably should just realize that the game's passed him by, and
Yeah,
he
and I mean,
seems.
I want to say that Super Bowl that he was in with the 49ers when they lost to the Chiefs, I want to say he got burned on one of the plays in
Mhm.
the second half that put him in a bad spot. And
I
it
think
was
I
just,
remember that too.
yeah, it was kind of like the speed was already gone then, and it's tough. You got to be fucking lightning fast in the NFL. So, unless you're Tom Brady and you're just amazing from the pocket. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's all I got, man. Did you see anything else news-wise?
So the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced the semifinalists for the class of 2024
Okay.
for the seniors and the coaches slash contributors. One of the things with it. There's 60 players on the list. Supposedly, it's supposed to be limited to 25, but if in their internal voting or the panel voting, ties can be included. So there's 31 players and 29 coaches/contributors. Not really many of them are from like our era of watching football.
Okay.
Like you have like Ken Anderson, who was quarterback, who was kind of I kind of remember the name, but like Ken Anderson and Otis Anderson, I remember the names, but it's not. And like Carl Banks, that's like old school. Mark Clayton as a player, which was way before our time. We know Mark Clayton from ESPN. Roger Craig, way before our time. The only one really that I'm seeing that like sticks out, two players from our time, which was Sterling Sharp.
Oh yeah.
And Clay Matthews are on the list of players.
Gotcha.
And then like the coaches, contributors, like there's a lot of people that like you go down half the list and I recognize them, like Tom Coughlin, Mike Holmgren, Robert Kraft, Virginia McCaskey, which is weird she's on that list because I thought she was I might be confusing her with somebody else, but I thought, no, Virginia McCaskey's the Bears. Never mind. I was thinking of Georgia, whatever, that used to own the Rams.
Okay.
Art Modell, Dan Reeves, Art Rooney, Marty Schottenheimer, Mike Shanahan. That's about it. That like really.
Yeah.
So
this is going to be a pretty legit old school wave, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, pretty legit. Like, I mean, for players especially, the ones I didn't mention: Carl Banks, Maxie Baugan, Larry Brown, Charlie Connerly, Henry Ellard, Randy Gardisher, Lester Hayes, Chris Hinton. That name rings a bell, actually. Cecil Isbell, Joe Jacoby, Billy Whiteshoes Johnson, Mike Ken, Bob, stop me if you recognize the name, Bob Kuchenberg, George Kuntz, Albert Lewis, Jim Marshall, Steve McMichael, Eddie Meter, Stanley Morgan, Tommy Nobis, Art Powell, Steve Tasker, Otis Taylor, Everson Walls, and Al Weister. I've never heard of 90% of those.
I'd have to have like a snapshot profile to like jog my memory, I think. If that would even help me, I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's like none of these players are
Can
really.
I phone a friend, James?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Your friend probably hasn't heard of him either.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I got some older friends, but even then, they probably need a clue. Can they phone a friend? Okay. Well, hey, that's all right. I mean, it's a lot of these people, I'm sure deserve it, and they've just been waiting their due time, and now it has arrived.
Yeah, and the other two little things I saw is one of them I think we thought was kind of like being rumored last week, and it's being more rumored. But the first one is apparently, with the franchise tag to get a long-term deal, the deadline's this coming Monday.
Oh yeah.
And apparently, Saquon Barkley has said he will not sign his franchise tag until after week 1 if he doesn't get a long-term deal. But here's the thing about it.
Yeah, I think I might have read a similar article or the same article.
Yeah, the Giants offered Saquon $13 million, and Saquon said, "No, I want 16."
Oh, geez. Okay. Do you know how many years they offered that?
I think it was like a 1 year, $13 million.
Okay, so we're gonna do you better than the franchise tag, but we only want you for 1 year still.
Yeah, and he said, "No, I want 16 million." And I didn't see. I just saw the numbers.
Okay. Because I saw an article about a guy sort of like polling GMs about how would they handle it, and it sounded like a group of them like indicated that they would have taken the 2 year franchise tag value. So, like, you could tag him this year and then tag him again next year for 120%. They would basically take that number, sprinkle a little bit on top of it, and say, look, I'll give you a 2 year contract right now, fully guaranteed for this amount. And then basically, they know that it's 2 years and then they're out. And at that point, the guy's in his late 20s or 30 years old, they let another team take the risk on him at that point.
So apparently it was a multi-year deal.
Okay.
With
Oh,
that was
man.
worth $13 million a year, 26 million over average value, 26 million over the first 2 seasons. And Saquon said, he was looking for Christian McCaffrey money.
Yeah, I think he might have overplayed his hand. This is a guy that he has scarcely been on the field except for this past year, which was a contract year. Go
Yeah,
figure.
and
So,
so so they told Saquon that that if he didn't accept the $13 million a year and the franchise tag, they would take that offer was off the
yeah,
table.
they'd rescind it. Yep.
Yeah, and that offer was rescinded, and they haven't put it back on the table. And based on certain calculations, if they do the 2 year franchise tag, he would get 22.22 million over the
Which
next
is
two
less.
years,
Yeah.
which is less than what he would have been guaranteed in the um
Yeah. If they want to play hardball. Yeah. And if they play hardball, it sounds like he's going to play hardball, skip some games,
mhm.
and which the league, I believe, under the CBA, basically, if you don't play and you're on the franchise tag, you don't get paid. So, um, you know, it just depends on how hard they want to go at it. So I heard something. Not like the same, but maybe a little bit similar about Josh Jacobs with the Raiders and him potentially sitting out early in the season. And I'm trying to remember what source it was, but they had basically asked, like, would the Raiders be bold enough to rescind the franchise tag offer, let him become a free agent, and go out and sign somebody else like Kareem Hunt or, Ezekiel Elliott or fucking a combination of both of them and run with them for a year and watch Josh Jacobs sort of like struggle in the free agent market because you're now in the middle of July where typically teams have already burned up a lot of their salary cap and it's harder to make those blockbuster deals. And so I thought that was interesting because I thought, man, it seems like this is a year, especially now with Dalvin Cook out there, that it seems like the teams have more power than ever when it comes to
Mhm.
negotiating with running backs. And we know that the position's been devalued, whatever you want to say, but there's a lot of guys that are proven names that are sitting on their couch at home waiting for a phone call. And so if I'm Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley and I get an offer for 13 million a year, fuck man, I'm taking that in a heartbeat, dude. Especially for
Yeah, no
Barkley,
shit.
who's been hurt all the time.
Yeah, and especially considering that, like, you're getting $13 million a year. Like, just do the simple math. Like, you're theoretically holding out for all this money because you want to do what's right for your family, blah blah blah. Which that annoys the fuck out
Yeah,
of
when
me.
you're making that much money, come on, man.
And
There's a very small group of the population that is going to feel for you, and it is less than 1%.
yeah, and but with it, it's like you're costing yourself money by not agreeing to 13 million, and they have the power because they can franchise tag you. What's the worst thing that could happen to the team? Oh, they don't have Saquon Barkley. He sits out a year. Well, shit. Then that franchise tag value just rolls over to next year. It just
Hmm.
tolls. He can't earn more money unless he gets a long term fucking deal.
Yep.
So
No, I agree, man. I agree. It's I don't know. They're playing with fire, is what it seems like to me. And I get it. They're trying. And then here's another one that I know I'm going on a tangent here, but man, I want to say that there was something about this on NFL Network where there was some talk. Man, I don't know why. I feel like maybe you and I talked about this before too. There was some talk about the players forming basically unions within the union. And so the running backs would all band together and form a running backs union. The basically any position that felt like they were devalued would do the same thing, like tight ends or whatever it would be. And they would have like basically, which I don't even know how you could legally do it under the NLRB or whatever, but or you would have to like somehow um, defect from the players union and start the new union is probably what would have to happen. But like basically they're like, we need to band together by position to fight for higher pay for our position. I don't. It just seems like it's getting a little bit squirrely, if you ask me, man.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing with it is if you do that, then you go outside the NL the
The
current players
CBA.
union, and you go outside. So you're outside the CBA.
You'd
So
have, yeah, you'd have to
therefore,
negotiate a new CBA for your new union.
right, and you can't with how the CBA is structured, a certain percentage of profits are of revenue is allocated to player salaries. Like it's like 49%, let's say.
Yep.
It's right around 50%. So then the NFLPA is not going to take less money in that. So the league's just gonna be like, fuck you. We have a CBA with the NFLPA.
Yep.
Like we don't have to. If there's a union covering them, we don't have to negotiate with another union.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. It just it's people, whatever they say, grasping at straws or whatever. They're
Hmm.
just reaching for something, anything to try and help them make an extra buck. And I think for some guys, they probably deserve it and they probably need it. But I think for a lot of them, you look at the landscape and you say, hey, man, don't be pushing something that's not meant to be.
Hmm. So it's just you know you have a problem with how you're valued. Play another position. Um, too
Yeah.
many people we talk about it all the time. Too many people became running backs because they wanted to do all this and there's too many good running backs. I mean,
Yep.
shit. If you can, like Josh Jacobs, wasn't Jacobs like a third round pick? And
No, he was a higher pick, but I know what you mean. There's so many of them that go in the middle rounds now, you know?
was he a higher pick?
Yeah, I'm
Was he a
pretty sure
first?
he
He
was a
must have been a first rounder. Yeah, we've had this conversation before.
yeah, he was I want to say a later first round pick, like
Yeah,
in the
he
20s or something.
was 24. You're
Okay.
right. But so who was I thinking of instead of Josh Jacobs?
Well, we were talking about Eckler a couple weeks ago.
Eckler, yeah. Eckler's a perfect example of him, and that one will be a good segue. Except for I have one more piece of news. Um, but yeah, it's just like too many. What's his face in Houston? Not Singletary, the other guy. Damian
Damian
Pierce.
Pierce?
Yeah, he was like a fifth rounder.
Oh, I don't even remember, but man, he had a great rookie year. I'm excited for that guy, man.
Yeah. If I knew how he spelled his name, I have to do it this way. I have to go to here, draft picks, staff roster, EON. Okay, he was a fourth round pick
Yeah.
107. No, I was close. I knew it was late, but it's still it's still the point. If you can have a guy that has a great game or great seasons, not a great season, but great seasons with a fourth round selection, why should you value? You can just find a random guy that's pretty good. We were talking
Yeah.
last week where some guy that was a late draft pick. I said he was one of my sleepers for fantasy this year.
Yeah, you got to be smart building your team. You can't throw money away unnecessarily because it
Hmm.
makes you deficient somewhere else. And,
Exactly.
it's like the old, like when you pay your franchise quarterback, it becomes hard to win the Super Bowl now because you've taken money
Hmm.
away from building a team around them. And man, as Lions fans, we dealt with that for years before they adjusted the CBA, where if you drafted a quarterback high, you were paying him like high-end starter money right off the bat, man, before he even
Yeah.
proved anything. And I mean, we got caught in so many contracts like Joey Harrington and freaking, I don't even know all these guys where it was just like right out of the gate, we knew we were screwed and
Hmm.
you're locked in where you're stuck with this guy now where the franchise is set back for like fucking 3 years. And so, you
Well,
know,
that's like drafting Mike Williams at number 10.
yeah,
Oh, never mind. Let's change the subject.
okay.
On to something we both love, which is not the Lions draft picks. So it's unofficially official, and I don't remember if
Okay.
we talked about this last week, with the Jets being on Hard Knocks this year.
Okay.
Apparently, sources told Schefter, it told Adam Schefter that that's the team that's going to be on Hard Knocks. And like if Adam Schefter's reporting it, he generally has a
Good
very it's
reason to
very
believe.
yeah it's very solid that that's the case.
I'd
So
like that.
yeah, so it's apparently with the rules like I don't know if you remember what teams can and cannot be on Hard Knocks.
No.
But so the criteria for a team being eligible for Hard Knocks, teams with first-year head coaches these teams cannot be on Hard Knocks. First-year head coaches qualified for the playoffs in the past 2 seasons, not both seasons, one of the past 2 seasons,
Okay.
and teams that appeared on Hard Knocks, which also includes Hard Knocks in season,
Okay.
in the last 10 years.
Whoa. Okay.
So the
Just seems like
choices,
you're narrowing it down quite a bit with those rules, man.
yeah, exactly. So there were actually 4 teams that theoretically could be on Hard Knocks this year, and
Okay.
that's the Jets, the Bears, the Saints, and the Commanders.
I'd like to see any of them, to be honest. I think
Right,
there's a good storyline for all those teams.
but it makes more sense the Jets with Aaron Rodgers and the whole
Yeah.
trade and and that and like it kind of makes more sense to have the Jets anyways. I think it would make for better TV. Plus, all the NFL media is in New York anyways, following the Jets around.
Yeah. And they've got a pretty stacked roster. Like if you did, I don't know, I was going to say Chicago, but Chicago's roster is getting better now. It's like sometimes it's like, and even with Chicago signing those linebackers and stuff like that, a hard knocks for them is going to be almost all about Justin Fields, you
Exactly.
know. So, yeah, at least in Green Bay, or I mean, in Green Bay, in New York, you've got a lot of other stories to follow. Brees Hall, Sauce Gardner, freaking Robert Sala. You got like a lot of good stuff going on there. Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's, freaking, by the way, two Central Michigan connections with the Jets. Okay, you got Tyler Conklin at tight end,
Oh, I forgot about Conklin. I was
and
like,
then you have
who's the other
Robert
one?
Sala got his first coaching job at Central Michigan. So,
Yeah, I forgot about Conklin, and I was like, when you said that, I was like, who's the other one?
boy, I was gonna let you know. Don't you worry, I got you.
Oh, I figured you would let me know, but I was just like,
Yeah, yeah. It took you a second there to wonder. Yeah, okay. All right. Is that it for the news, James?
yeah, that was about it.
Okay. Well, let's switch it on over here and do our main event. And so, yeah, I'm pulling up my notes here. We're going to do our fantasy football top 10 rankings review. And so basically, what the heck does that mean? We're going to go through, we're going to look at the Yahoo Fantasy Football rankings by position, and we're going to evaluate the top 10 for each position. And so we're going to tell you, hey, yeah, Patrick Mahomes should be the top quarterback taken, but maybe you don't take so and so at 5 or whatever. And here's a couple things to think about, and blah, 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 whatever the heck we want to put into it. And so, how do you want to kick this thing off here, James? Quarterbacks first?
Let's just go down the list. Quarterbacks first.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I guess here's what I'll do. I'll start off by giving you the Yahoo top 10, and then you can jump in, give me your thoughts on it, maybe how you'd reorder it or whatever you want to do. And then when you're done, I'll come back and I'll give you, my couple of notes on it, and then we'll go to the next position. So with quarterbacks, Yahoo has them in the following order for right now. And I did this by the season ranking, not by, like, I know they give you a couple options. They give you like this week and whatever else. And I sorted it by their season ranking, which has Patrick Mahomes at 1. Then it goes Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua Tagovailoa, however you say his name. And I see you scratching your head, which means we must have sorted our lists differently.
No, I honestly think what happened, and just let me actually sign in.
Sure. Because yeah, I mean, Yahoo gives you so much data. You can do it by ADP, but that's like the people's choice. And then you can do it by their rankings, and so like they'll rank them in a lot of different ways. Like if you do their default ranking, depending on the time of year, I think it looks at last season's points, and then you can sort it by like all different factors. Like they'll give you an option to like look at their rankings for week 1. They give you an option to look at like the rankings for the first 4 weeks of the season. And then like I basically clicked on the rankings for the season and then just sorted it by top to bottom. So
Yeah, so basically what the issue is, and I haven't signed in on my phone yet, so I'm just having issues signing in. So
it's okay.
That's a weird verification code. I'm gonna have to write this down because I was expecting numbers and it is definitely not numbers. So yeah, but what I think is because like it's the ranking for yours is with you signed in based on our league settings, where mine
That's
were.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. So every league has different scoring, and yeah, that'll automatically adjust the Yahoo rankings accordingly. So yeah, you're looking at it just like they're generic, and then I'm looking at our league. Yep.
So.
Which is a regular scoring league, not as huge of an issue for the quarterbacks, but it becomes much more of an issue for the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, obviously.
Okay. What the fuck is this? All right.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'll pull it up on my my browser here, so I can maybe walk you through the steps on how I got my list.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be. What? Jesus Christ, what the fuck's wrong with you? Not you.
Okay. I mean, you can talk shit to me too. That's fine.
Yeah, it just went. There we go. Okay, so now let me click resend, and it's gonna ask me. Let's do it this way.
Oh boy, we're getting a call recorder warning here. Hopefully we have no technical difficulties, James, but it looks like it's still rolling. So,
What are your security concerns, Yahoo? Okay, I skip that. Now where the fuck is it? Go back. Skip that. Go back. Remind me later. Okay. So I have to go to our league.
yeah, so when you're in our league, you'll go to the players tab and then there's a couple different drop down menus. You got to click the first one, which is you got to select all players instead of all available because we're a keeper league, so it's only going to show you like the free
Yeah.
agents. And so yeah, you got to like do the first one to get all the players, then you do the second one to do the position, and then in the third drop down, that's the one where I go and I click on the rank, and then I basically, like get it to pump out the list, and I click on the season column to give me the season ranking instead of just the first week or however they have it set
Yeah.
up.
Season projected. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I still have a different list than you.
Huh. Okay. That's strange. Okay,
So
well, I gotta believe we're fairly close.
so
So,
it's so the list that came up for me was Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Fields, Lawrence, Herbert, Prescott, Watson.
wow, it is fairly different. Yeah. Huh. That's messed up, man. And I just did mine earlier today. So, like I could have understood maybe if we were looking
Okay,
at,
I figured it out. You sorted it by fantasy points, and that's where the issue was. So it's
okay.
Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Jackson, Fields, Herbert, Prescott, Lawrence.
Yes.
Tagovailoa. Okay, there we go. Technical difficulties. We apologize for that.
All right. We're on the
Um,
same sheet of music.
yes, we're on the same sheet of music. I thought we were, but then it got screwed up because I wasn't signed in.
No, it's
All right.
okay. They give you so many different ways of looking at it that it's fairly complicated nowadays. So,
Yeah. So are you? So for my list,
yeah, give me your comments here, bud.
I have a little bit different list than this, and
Okay.
like the easiest way to go through this is going to be I'm going to give you my list 1 through 10 on quarterbacks.
Sure.
Allen, Hurts, Mahomes. I did my list really weird. Jackson at 4, Burrow at 5, Herbert at 6, Fields at 7,
Okay.
Lawrence at 8, and because I did my list really fucking weird. Cousins at 9,
Okay.
and where is my QB 10? I just saw it. Prescott at 10.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, a couple issues I had with this list. With Tagovailoa, but the obvious issue there is the fact that he has to
He's
play a
boomer
full.
bust and
He's very
injury
much boomer
risk.
bust.
Yeah.
For Kirk Cousins, like Cousins is consistent and he has the clear cut best receiver in the league, and so he's going to put up numbers. He's consistent. He's accurate. He's going to put up the numbers with Justin Jefferson. Mahomes, I'm kind of down on Mahomes because when I rated how I rated out his strength of schedule
Okay.
and like how easy their schedule was. And I came out with like a 2 star, like a super hard schedule
Gotcha.
for them. Um, it's just so that put Allen and Hurts above him. Burrow, I also came up with a harder schedule for defenses they're facing, and
Okay.
so that kind of put Jackson ahead of him. And I mean Herbert, you can make the argument too that Herbert has a hard schedule, but I still kind of like him where he is, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I
Because I
bumped up
had it.
Herbert onto mine. I bumped Herbert up to 4 on mine because, I know last year was kind of a strange year with the injuries. He
Mhm.
had his own injury and then Keenan Allen had that mysterious hamstring injury or whatever. But when you go back and look at 2021, Herbert was the QB2 in 2021. And so I felt like, man, if they can get back to some of that, he deserves to be higher than Yahoo having him at 7, and so I bumped him up to 4 on my list.
Yeah, that and force aggressive there. And like I put Prescott down a little bit. I'm just not sold on Prescott.
Okay.
Like something just it just something about him rubs me the wrong way.
Uh, yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I kept him where he was at on my list, and so I kept him at 8. For me, I looked at last year and I thought, okay, he threw a lot of picks, and he also had some injury stuff going on. Um, Kellen Moore's out, McCarthy's calling the offense, and I just feel like he's also got better weapons now this year with Brandon Cooks as their wide receiver too, and Michael Gallup is coming back healthy as well, and so I thought, okay, Dak should do better than what he did last year. Um, but yeah, it's tough because we've seen the good, bad, and the ugly with him at this point.
Exactly. So I don't I'm not 100% sold on him,
Sure.
and I just his style. I just have flashbacks to what was it like 2 years ago where he broke his ankle,
Oh yeah, that was nasty.
and like that it just sours me on. I had his
So
receiver rated pretty high too, so
yeah, so I mean, yeah, he'll get production there, but yeah, it's more about the full package than just the one-to-one connection. Um, all right, well, let me ask you this. So I've got a couple differences, and one of them for mine is that for the top, I kept it the same. I like Mahomes, I like Josh Allen, I like Hurts, and I like them in that order because Mahomes got it done last year when nobody thought he was going to get it done with that group of wide receivers. And
mhm.
it's Mahomes. It's hard to argue against it. Josh Allen, I like him at 2 because we know he's got that incredibly high ceiling. He's got that run pass combo. And even last year with some injury stuff, he was one of the top quarterbacks. And so I like him there. Then Hurts, what's not to like with Hurts? I mean, geez, even if there's some regression in his game, um, he's got that run pass combo, which is huge in fantasy. But then, yeah, like I said, I put Herbert at 4, and some of that was going back a year to 2021 and looking at the QB2 number that he put up and thinking, okay, he's capable of doing solid. And then I think part of it for me too is also I'm not a huge fan of Lamar Jackson. He was at 5. I pushed him down on my list to 6. Um, and then I had Burrow at 5. So Burrow didn't fall far. I like Burrow. He's about as steady as they get for like that tier of guys on the list. Um, Man, I'm just trying to think of what else I can say. Justin Fields is a tricky one. I kept him at 7. I don't necessarily like if I'm building a team, I'm not like crazy about Fields right now. It's just that in fantasy football, that running ability gives him a ton of value. And so I
Hmm.
get why he's at 7. Um, but here's where I guess I wanted to ask you is that um, I put Rodgers at 9 on my list, and I went back and forth a lot about whether to squeeze him into my top 10 at all. And I just thought, okay, let's go back and let's look at 2021 for Rodgers because we know last year was a train wreck. He was a top 10 quarterback in 2021. Um, and I'm just looking at my note. He was the QB 8. With this potentially being his last hurrah, you know he's going to be motivated. You know they've got the weapons. Um, you know, what do you think? Could you see him at the bottom of that top 10, or do you think no,
No,
he's past his prime at this point? I mean, obviously
I
he's
have
past his prime at this point, but
I have Rodgers at 15.
okay.
So that's the interesting one that like where I really deviate from this list is because I ranked out all the quarterbacks. I ranked because I'm doing my draft prep and everything. So I ranked my top 150 players for fantasy in order, and that's where I'm kind of having to look because I didn't sort it by QB and I didn't do it properly
Yeah.
in Excel, so or by position. So but that's the interesting part on my list where I have Geno Smith at 14,
Hmm.
Rodgers at 15, Russell Wilson at 16, Tua at 17.
Okay. Yeah, so I kept Tua on my list at 10, but it was, one of the things where I was reluctant because he had the injury issues last year with the concussions, and then he also was like boom or bust where he had a couple 40-point games in fantasy, and that obviously skews your points per game number. And so I kept him there just because I love the weapons and I love the coach. And, if he is healthy, I think there is that boom potential, but it is risky. And then, and then I did have a couple, um, sort of like additional notes below my top 10 just to call out is that if you look at the ADP, which I know we covered a lot of the ADP stuff last week, but Deshaun Watson is in the top 10 right now on the ADP standpoint. And so he's ahead of Tua. Um, and so people are getting high on Watson going into drafts. And so that's just something to keep an eye on. Then the other one, which is more relevant for people like us in the keeper leagues, Kyler Murray, like him or not, he was the QB 6 last year on a points per game standpoint, and he was the QB 4 in 2021. If you're in a keeper league and you can stash him somewhere, he's going. He's got a 128.2 ADP. So I mean that's like 13th round basically. Um, you know, Sometimes it's worth rolling the dice on a guy like that. And now I think you got to keep in mind DeAndre Hopkins is gone. That team is in a crazy rebuild. And so even if you're looking to next year, not this year, he may not be as good as he was in the QB 4 scenario, but a ton of value for that late of a potential keeper pick. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. The issue I have with a keeper is like, especially in our league, like it's kind of outside of like you would have had to draft him a couple years ago because I think last year he was going top 3 rounds in general.
Yeah, you're right.
But so it's a solid stash. Like for this season, like you're still looking at a top 32 quarterback. Like I would have ranked him out somewhere around 24, 25, with not knowing how many games he's going to miss and how he's going to come back from his injury. But
For
And
sure. Yeah.
he's such too much of a wild card for me to say, yeah, you should keep him.
So, and here's one other note I had on the quarterbacks before we move on that I just think is good to throw out there. I am a critic of Lamar Jackson, and I'm just surprised that he's had the success he's had without getting seriously injured. And, you know, his play has sort of like come down and, whatever, but people still love him. They think he's electric. I was looking at the week by week on Fantasy Pros for his fantasy points per game. He had 2 games last year where he just was like an absolute boomer. And then if you look at his points outside of those 2 weeks, he was a very subpar fantasy quarterback. And so I just think you got to be very cautious with Lamar Jackson. The Lamar that won the MVP, it shows up far less than you think in fantasy football. You're going to get those 1 or 2 weeks where he scores 40 points, but then you're going to have so many weeks where he only gets you 15 or 16 and you're going to be pulling your hair out. And so just be careful with Lamar. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, this is very true.
Okay, let's move on. And how about running backs next, my man?
All right, let's go with running backs.
All right, so
this is going to shock you.
all right, well here I'll give you the Yahoo list and then you shock me, okay? So Yahoo has Christian McCaffrey at 1, and then Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, and Travis Etienne. Take that mic, James. What you got to say?
This is my list.
Okay.
Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor.
Ooh, bold.
Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Nick Chubb, Brees Hall, Saquon Barkley. Hold on, let's go down. Mixon, Ramondre Stevenson.
Okay.
Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard.
Okay. So yeah, you didn't have Bijan in the top 10.
Is that 10?
Yeah, Walker was 10 for you.
Okay. So I had
go.
Etienne just outside the top 10.
Okay.
So with Austin Eckler, the thing with him is I really see him going to another team that's going to use him better. Even if he doesn't, this year is going to be that fuck you should have paid me year.
He's just going to blow it up. Yeah.
And he's going to blow it up, and he's going to have like an LT season with like 20
plus touchdowns.
LT season with like 25 touchdowns.
I'd love to see that for Eckler.
So, with
you didn't have McCaffrey in your top 10.
No, McCaffrey was 2.
I had Jonathan Taylor as 2 for you. Was Taylor 3?
Taylor was 3.
Okay, so then Walker was 11. You didn't have him in the top 10. Okay. So okay. Stevenson was your number. Or I'm sorry, Stevenson was your number 10 guy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry,
No, that's all right. I was just like scratching my head there, like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I missed something, but yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So and like you kind of have to have McCaffrey up there.
Yeah.
I think my issue with McCaffrey is San Francisco uses too much of a committee.
Yeah, and McCaffrey has had some injury issues. Last year was, last year he got hurt too, so it's risky.
Yeah, and my issue with Chubb, I think Chubb's being overrated and Saquon are being way overrated here. Because Saquon is going to miss games.
Yeah, I love Chubb. I think he's one of the best backs in the league. My problem is that they're moving to a shotgun offense, and I'm concerned how that's going to affect him. I still kept him on my list. I had him at 4, but I'm just watching it closely because I feel like they did him a disservice by bringing in Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. There's a big disservice with it. Plus with Jonathan Taylor being up so high, so much higher than this is I think. Well, I had him at 3. I thought he was at 5 on this list. Jonathan Taylor at 3 is simply because they're going to have a rookie quarterback and they're going to rely on the run game a lot.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I had him at, yeah, I guess, well, this was probably the shocker for my list is that I didn't have Jonathan Taylor in my top 10. And that was for a couple reasons. One of them is that if you looked at his points per game last year, he only hit 9.9, which had him outside of the top 10 last year. And then I thought it would be even harder for him this year with a rookie quarterback because defenses are probably going to stack the box until Richardson, basically gives them a reason not to. And so that was like really the big shock on my running back list.
Yeah, which that does make a little bit of sense there. I just we'll see.
He is immensely talented, and I hope he's successful because I loved him coming out of Wisconsin. I wanted the Lions to draft him, and I mean, hey, you woulda, coulda, shoulda, all that kind of stuff. But all right, let me give you my top 10 real quick. So I've got McCaffrey at 1. I kept him there. I do think there's a lot of risk with him getting hurt. After that, at 2, I've got Derrick Henry. You know me, I love power football. Henry was a lot healthier last year than I think people give him credit for. And he puts up monster fantasy numbers, dude. He put up 16.9 points per game last year. Seeing him fall to 6 on Yahoo made me think, what people are just like giving up on him, it seems like. Then I had Eckler at 3. I had Chubb at 4. Then I had Barkley and Jacobs at 5 and 6. And for those two guys, I kept them paired together in that range because a lot of it for me is what's going to happen with their contracts. Do they get the longer term deal? Do they get traded? What's going to happen? Because I think that is going to affect what kind of play you're going to get from them. Hate to say it, that's just the way the game goes. At 7, I got Breece Hall. And then I got Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, and Bijan Robinson. And I was reluctant to have Bijan in the top 10 just because he's got competition and the quarterback situation. I think it could slow down their offense depending on what happens with Desmond Ridder. I need to see something out of him before I feel more comfortable in what their prospects are as an offense, basically.
Which makes sense.
And I'm glad that you had Mixon in the top 10 as well because it seemed almost like he was a bit of a forgotten man here when I looked at the rankings. Mixon, he is like in recent memory, like a fairly safe top 10 running back. And it seems like these last couple of years he's been sliding further and further down. And now I know he had some migraine issues a few years ago, but last year was a fairly solid year for him, and he was the running back 10 last year with what was like a really crappy offensive line. I gotta believe they're going to be better after bringing in Orlando Brown and making the moves they made. I'd be buying on Mixon for this year, and maybe the last year I'd be buying on him, but I'd be doing it this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing with Mixon is, like, I kind of struggled where to put Mixon on the list simply because of that. I think he's kind of tailing off.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the dual threat. He can run, he can catch. And I think he's still got one more good year in him, especially with an improved offensive line to help open it up for him. All right, and then so for the running backs, I had some honorable mentions, James, and one of them, I don't know, maybe that's not the right way of putting it, but we talked about Dameon Pierce earlier. He's a guy to keep an eye out for. He averaged 10.5 points a game last year as a rookie. That was with Davis Mills at quarterback. If Stroud can get some traction early on, I think Dameon Pierce can do better than he did last year because hypothetically the field gets opened a little bit more. Um, so I kind of have him maybe knocking on the door of that top 10. And then also one just to keep an eye on is Dalvin Cook. He's a free agent. We don't know where he's going to land, but he was the running back 12 last year and sort of in that same vein, maybe to a lesser degree, of Barkley and Jacobs. It's going to depend where does Cook land, what are his contract details, and what role is he going to have. But he still has a couple more solid years, like in running back years, where he could be a top 10 guy if he lands in the right situation.
Hmm. I agree there. I'm just looking at my list and I was like, I'm I'm surprised that wow that. Sorry, I got ahead of myself and I was like, why is this guy not in my top 10? And then as I looked at, I'm still trying to figure out what I was thinking
Okay.
on that. We'll get to that.
All right. Well, that's all I got for the running backs, man. You want to go to wide receivers?
Yeah, we can go to wide receivers.
All right. So for wide receivers, Yahoo has Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, C.D. Lamb, Jalen Waddle, and Garrett Wilson. That rounds out their top 10. What do you got to say about that, my friend?
Um, Let me put numbers here real quick, and
Sure.
because I think I have two that are the same.
Gotcha.
I really do. Let's see. Nope, not the same. Nope, nope.
I had
The
a lot of the
same.
same names, but in a different order.
Yeah, I have a way different order here. I do. I have one.
Okay.
I'm seeing one that is the same. Some of them are the same names, some of them aren't. So I have Justin Jefferson number one. I alluded to that
Yeah,
um,
I'm with you on that.
with Cousins. Cooper Kupp number two.
All right, you think he's coming back? I like that.
Jamar Chase number three. Tyreek Hill number four. This is the one I have the same. Devonta Adams.
Okay.
Then Stephon Diggs. Then C.D. Lamb. A.J. Brown.
You and I were pretty close here.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Holy cow, you and I were like freakishly close.
And Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
All right, let's just run down yours real quick.
All right, yeah, it is different, but it's close. So I had Justin Jefferson at one, then I had Chase, then I had Adams, then I had Hill, Cup, Diggs, Lamb, Brown, Waddle, St. Brown. And so I like that we both got St. Brown in the top 10. We had four of our picks were identical, and then a couple of them were just like one or two off. So you and I were pretty in line on the wide receivers here.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I moved Jalen Waddle out and Garrett Wilson in because I think Rodgers is more consistent than Tua.
Sure. No, and so James, I hear you on that, and my reason for dropping Wilson out was just that when I looked at the wide receiver room in New York and the tight ends that they have also, and then also the running backs that they got going on, I thought that offense could be a lot more balanced, and I could see Rodgers spreading the ball around more than maybe people are expecting, which could potentially limit some of Wilson's ceiling. But I agree. I mean, if him and Rodgers have the right chemistry, he could be like the, Devontae Adams #1 guy in that offense and put up huge numbers this year.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I try to avoid having two players from the same team in the top 10 because that just seems like
Gotcha.
too much.
Yeah. No, I
With
gotcha. Yeah. You don't see it that often anymore, I don't think,
Yeah, like it's rare that it happens, and with today's NFL, it seems, but to me, it's too difficult to spread the ball around that much.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I did have a couple notes. One of them was with Jamar Chase, and so Yahoo's obviously high on him. They've got him as the top dog.
Hmm.
I tried to temper my expectations a little bit just because, they still have T. Higgins, they still have Tyler Boyd, and they do still have Mixon at running back. And so, Chase is a beast, but there are a lot of mouths to feed there. And you just got to be, a little bit cautious with that. Justin Jefferson, he's gotten it done, like inside, outside, done everything you could ask the guy to. Like, to me, he's just the clear cut #1. I couldn't have Chase above him. And then I almost considered guys like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill above Chase, but I like Chase's quarterback situation more, and it's more
Hmm.
stable. And so I thought that that was important to take into account. But that if I had the option between Chase and Devontae Adams, I personally probably take Devontae Adams if all else was equal. But that's like kind of like, you know, pick your flavor, and that's what I was doing. It's just that Chase has the better quarterback situation. So
Yeah, and also Chase has an easier schedule. I can see why Yahoo's high on Chase because he has an easier schedule for wide receivers,
hmm
and all the other, like, it's a 4 star. I ranked it 1 through 5 star. 1 being hardest, 5 being easiest. None of them got 5, so it's a four for me. It was a 4 star schedule for ease wise for wide receivers, and that I almost and it's I have it Cup and Chase in that order, but it's really Cup and Chase are probably tied at second.
yeah. No, and yeah, I mean, Cup was a beast before he got hurt. And so, for me, I kept him a little bit lower at 5 just because I like to see how guys come back from injury before going overboard. And it's also not just him coming back from injury, it's Stafford. We know that
Hmm.
offensive line was like piss poor. And so we got to see a few things there. But I love me some Cooper Cup. You know that.
Yeah,
So.
and the thing with I just lost my train of thought. Wow, damn.
Cooper Cup,
Cooper Cup,
Los Angeles Rams,
Los
Stafford,
Angeles
people hurt.
Rams, Stafford, people hurt. With the thing with the Rams though is they have like no wide receivers outside of Cup.
Yeah, so he's got to be the man.
Yeah, he's got to be the man. And if I don't see the Rams having a as dismal season as they did last year. Um,
Yeah, no,
so
nowhere to
that's
go
why
but up.
nowhere to go but up. And so if he's got to be the man, I think Cup is the top player that would step up and be the man and put up the numbers.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, and I like that you put St. Brown in there, like I said earlier, but I think some people don't realize that he was the wide receiver 10 last year on a points per game basis. And
Hmm.
he's a super steady guy, gets a lot of targets, and he's like sure-handed. And hopefully the Lions' offense will be even better with another year under their belts. We talked about it. The big thing is fingers crossed. Brad Johnson has some wrinkles to that playbook because a lot of times those like young, hot offensive coordinators they get figured out if they don't have that wrinkle. But I could see St. Brown being a staple in that top 10, the next however many years, as long as they can do that with the playbook.
Yeah, and And the other thing with St. Brown, I had him in the top 10 because when you look at like fantasy playoffs week 14, 15, 16, yeah, 14, 15, 16 is like when our playoffs are, right? Or 15 and 16.
I think 15, 16, 17 now that we're on
Yeah.
the longer schedule.
Okay. So then yeah, that's right. When you look at it, like in the playoff run, 15 they have Denver, 16 they have Minnesota, and then but championship game if it's 17, I mean they have Dallas, but so I think he can put up the points early and then be solid for the playoff run. Once
Nice.
Jameson Williams is going to have a breakout, they're going to start teams will start focusing on Williams, and St. Brown will be open more.
Yeah, it'd be even easier for him.
Hmm.
And then, so James, I did have my one guy below the line. I wanted to mention at wide receiver, which was Amari Cooper, is a guy to keep an eye out for. So he was the wide receiver 11 last year on a points per game basis. If Watson does take that
Hmm.
step up that people are expecting him to, especially with them bringing in Elijah Moore to be their number two at wide receiver, I can easily see Cooper Cup, I mean, not Cooper Cup, Amari Cooper getting back into the top 10. So
Yeah,
keep an eye on
I
him, man.
I agree there, and also it's to note that I deemed DeAndre Hopkins ineligible for the top 10 because he's currently not on a team.
Yeah, so I didn't have him on my list either, and yeah, I guess it's almost like the Dalvin Cook thing. It's like we
Hmm.
got to see where he lands. We got to see what the contract is. There's too many unknowns at this point. And I love him is, the potential he's had all these years, especially with all the shitty quarterbacks he's played with throughout all the years. But I also I don't like he made that 1,000-yard receiver comment. And you pointed out last week, well, you got to be on the field, man. And just because you extrapolated some numbers, well, it's been more than
Yeah.
2 years now since you've been a true
Hmm.
1,000-yard receiver. So,
Hmm.
that to me, it rubbed me the wrong way. But yeah, let's see where he lands, and then we can possibly, modify our list later.
Yeah, and but with that though, that's also why Stephon Diggs was dropped down to 6 for me
Okay.
because I'm seeing a lot of rumblings that the Bills are the only ones that have offered Hopkins a contract yet, as of yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a great spot for Hopkins at
Mhm.
this stage of his career. You go, you be a two, let Diggs get all the attention, and it should mean that Hopkins could get amazing stats for way less work than he's ever had to do before. Hopefully, he could be that missing piece to get him the Super Bowl, and it works out for everybody, man.
Yeah, which also I'm seeing a lot of rumblings that Miami has offered Dalvin Cook a contract.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit last week that he refused to visit, but that like it seems like that's the front runner for him to go to anyhow. And I don't know, man. Something about that offense, it just like the way he runs and what they like to do with running backs, it just seems like a good fit to me, but it's like one of those ones where I can't put my finger on it. It just feels that way. It's a gut feeling, you know?
Mhm. So apparently, the contract that was offered from Miami was not at his what he wanted, so he's going to wait the market out.
Hmm.
But it looks like that he's if he signs, it's going to be closer to training camp, if not after training camp already started.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and at
I want.
running back, you can do that. You can, you know,
Mhm.
get acclimated really quickly. All right, dare we move on to tight ends, James?
Oh, okay. Let's move on to tight ends.
Yeah, and so I think maybe we throw out the disclaimer ahead of time here for tight ends. There's usually Kelsey, and then it's a fucking crapshoot from there. So,
Yes.
and sometimes it's more than that. It's Kelsey, it's Mark Andrews, it's Kittle, and then it's really like a shit show. And so, But yeah, let's just go through it. Yahoo's got Kelsey, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, TJ Hawkinson, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, and Pat Freiermuth. I was surprised to see Hawkinson down at 7. I thought Yahoo would have had him higher, to be honest. But, um, what's your take on it, James? And you don't have to go crazy because we know tight ends are very, very difficult to gauge outside of that top 2 or 3.
So I'm just counting this.
Sure.
Okay, I at least hit half. Okay, I'm at 6. Okay, so I have 4 tight ends that are not on this list.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
I do have 2 of them, maybe 3 of them in the same spot. But okay, so I have Kelsey. He's the clear-cut, obvious number 1. You said you were surprised Hawkinson was at number 7. I have Hawkinson at number 2.
Okay.
Based on schedule, based on Cousins.
Yeah, and I was surprised at 7, meaning I thought he would be higher.
Yeah, right, exactly. You said you were surprised at 7. Okay. I have him at number 2 based on schedule, based on receiving weapons they have in Minnesota, and I think him and Cousins can kind of get that connection going.
Sure.
Then I have Kittle at number 3.
Okay.
Then I have Mark Andrews at 4. And Mark Andrews is at 4 for me, even though it's a relatively easy schedule for tight ends, because I don't trust Lamar.
Yeah, and Andrews had a down year last year, man.
He had a down year last year. They got more weapons than they had last year.
Yep.
So he's a risky proposition for me. Then at 5, I have Kyle Pitts. That was 3, 4, 5. No, they had him at 6, not 5. So Pitts at 5. Like I have concerns with Pitts. I think it might be a little bit high, but that's the last one I had on. No, second to last one I had on the list.
Okay.
Because I like Kyle Pitts. I think if he can get the right quarterback to throw him the ball, he can be a phenom.
Yeah.
And because he's more a wide receiver than the tight end as it is. Now, at 6 is where I went a little crazy here.
Sure.
And I put Dulcich.
I had him below the line with a comment. I'm glad you got him.
I think Russ can kind of turn it around a little bit up there, and how he's going to turn it around is going to end up being a lot of dumping off to the tight end. Plus, for tight end matchup-wise this season, they have of the easier schedules.
Mm-hmm.
At 7, I have Evan Ingram, which that's the last one that I had on the list. Evan Ingram, they had him at 8. I had him at 7. You're really splitting hairs.
Yeah, and he had a really good year last year in Jacksonville. So, nothing wrong with that. No bones there.
And then I went rookies.
Okay. Which is aggressive for tight end, but
it's aggressive for tight end.
When you feel it in the jellies, you feel it in the jellies.
I think these tight ends are in the right situation, and I want to double check. And they all have. Oh. Okay, that's the one. That's the one. I knew I had a 5-star matchup for somebody. So I thought they had easier schedules too. Also on there. I just want to make sure. So I think the easiest schedule matchup for tight ends, schedule-wise, is Las Vegas. So I went at number 8. I went Michael Mayer.
Okay.
At number 9, I went Dalton Kincaid.
Okay.
And at number 10, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, and I went Sam Laporta.
Man, I was so close to squeezing him into my top 10, James. I'm glad I'm not the only one. The
Um,
frickin' reviews he's getting in the off season are insane for a Lions tight end, man.
yeah, it's ridiculous. His reviews are ridiculous, and I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit on him, and I don't know why, and I hate the fact that I am,
Okay, that's fine.
because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the Lions. And then I put Waller as a note, because Waller could easily be in the top 10.
Yeah,
Um, I just don't know the situation with the Giants and
sure.
Danny Jones and the chemistry there. I just plus the Giants have, this is one of the few
Yeah, I
one
thought
star
Waller.
that they have an incredibly hard schedule for
Okay.
tight ends.
Yeah, so I liked Waller a lot on my list. I had him at 4, and I thought that he'd be a big part of the Giants' offense. You just have to deal with the ups and downs of Daniel Jones. And so it's going to
Mhm.
be choppy. But they wanted him bad, and you know that they don't have like any true wide receiver one. So him as a tight end could be like a really good piece there for Daniel Jones. So,
It could be, and if they're using him more as a wide receiver than a tight end, then that matchup is different. That went from in my ranking system a 1-star matchup to, if that would go from a 1-star matchup to, let me find receiver matchup. I gotta find a freaking Giants receiver. So that goes from a 1-star to a 3-star.
okay.
So that makes a big difference how they're utilizing him,
Oh,
and
for sure.
I think he could easily be a top 10 tight end. It's just I'm concerned with the in what's the word I'm looking for, inconsistencies with Daniel
Yeah.
Jones, new situation, and a super hard matchup for
Yeah.
scoring for tight ends.
And it's, we talked about it. It's tough to gauge tight ends once you get out of out of Kelsey. So
Mm-hmm.
it's you know, you're just kind of throwing darts. But let me give you my top 10. So I had Kelsey at 1, obviously. Then I put Andrews at 2. After that, I had Kittle, Waller, Hawkinson, Goddard, Freiermuth, Ingram, Njoku, and Pitts. And so I had a lot of the same guys from the Yahoo list, just in a fairly different order. Um, you know, in the one guy that it's like, so Freiermuth, they had him at 10. I put him at 7. I like his prospects a lot with Kenny Pickett. I think something about that combination this year is going to overperform what they're projecting. Um, for a lot of these other guys, I feel like you can make the argument for them to be on the list, and I just, it's like this. It's in fantasy football, you know, go ahead and take Kelsey early if you really want, but you're going to have to take him really fucking early. And then just fucking wait on tight end because you just have no idea what you're going to get. And so that's the way I've always drafted at tight end. If there's a guy that I love, I'll take him early. Other than that, it's going to be one of my last picks, and that's just the way it is. And history shows that that's how it plays out in fantasy football at tight end. But
Mm-hmm.
below the line, so I had Dolchik like you, but I mean I had him below the line. I like that you had him above the line. Because of that Taysom Hill type effect that he could be involved with in Denver. And then I did have Taysom Hill below the line as a guy to keep an eye on because last year was kind of a strange year. He was the tight end 3 from a points per game perspective, but he did play at quarterback like he's done in his normal gadget kind of role. Is that going to keep happening now that they have Derek Carr? I really don't know. But if it does, don't be afraid to roll the dice on Taysom Hill because you're going to get like some boomer bust weeks. But if you're taking a tight end later in the draft, that's just how they're all going to be anyhow. And so Taysom Hill, at least he's got the track record, and at least he has that potential of getting in on a gadget play and being a wild card quarterback or whatever else. And it may be less with Derek Carr, but it could still be good for a tight end position if that's how they have him labeled in Yahoo. And then I also had Zach Ertz below the line. That's one that I wouldn't put him in the top 10. He's coming off an injury. He's in the decline phase of his career, and he's obviously got a very questionable situation at quarterback. But I also wanted to point out he's got far less competition for targets, and he was the tight end 7 last year. And so he could be one of those guys that if he's healthy, they could just be feeding him because they don't have a lot of other options. So, but don't put a lot of weight on it. Just keep an eye on it. Yes.
All right. So kickers or defense?
Oh, fucking kickers all day, buddy.
All right. So I'll take the lead on this one. I'm serious. I have my top 10 kickers.
Then you take the whole thing because I didn't do kickers.
All right. So Yahoo has Tucker, Patterson, McPherson, Bass, Butker, Koo, Carlson, Jason Sanders, Brandon McManus, and Michael Badgley.
Okay.
So I differ a little bit. I had Tucker at 1. I think Tucker's the clear cut, and plus Baltimore tends to stumble in the red zone a lot. And so that's going to lead to more points. Strength of schedule wise, they have their schedule for putting points on the board or giving up points to kickers based on last year's performances is like a 5 out of 5 stars. Like it's super easy strength of schedule for kickers. McPherson at 2, and McPherson's at 2, even though I gave Cincinnati a rare 0 star for strength of schedule. Like super hard, like impossible schedule for kickers. But McPherson is that good, and I think Cincinnati is that good of a team that can put up the points.
Yeah, they'll keep moving the ball.
At 3 and 4, it's really 3. I have Bass and Butker tied. Mm-hmm. Butker was, if it weren't for strength of schedule, I think Kansas City has an easier schedule, so that put Butker up with Bass.
Yeah, and Butker's one of those guys that, from a fantasy standpoint, we laugh about the kickers and whatever else, but you can make the argument that if you're on an offense like Kansas City, where all they do is score touchdowns, it doesn't matter if you got an amazing kicker like Butker. Ones just don't add up to huge numbers in fantasy. You need a guy that's kicking field goals, not point attempts. And so Butker, he's great, and it's great that he's attached to that high-powered offense, but there are going to be some weeks where he gets 5 points because it was 5 touchdowns, and somebody else that's a scrub's going to get 9 because it was 3 field goals.
Very true. And then just Carlson, Koo, Jason Sanders, Jason Myers, then McManus. The reason McManus is... I'm confusing McManus and McPherson.
Yeah, McManus is Jacksonville now.
Yeah. McManus at 9 and Jake Elliott at 10. These are your streamers. These guys, a lot of them have week, 4 of the 6 in this range have week 10 or later bye weeks, so you have a long stretch where you don't have to worry about kicker. And that's kind of bump them up higher to me, and their teams put up points.
Yeah, you just put them in your roster and you don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and just in general, don't draft a kicker early. If you really want Tucker, just take him at your own risk. It's fantasy football. Take guys that you want because it is a game. But if you're trying to win, kickers are so hard to predict. You just wait and make it your last pick or your second to last pick, however you're going to do it with your tight ends and your defense. So,
Yeah, sometimes, some years I forget to draft a kicker anyways. And like get to my roster, it's like, oh shit, I didn't get a kicker.
yeah.
Like
It,
round 16, it's like, oh shit, I need a kicker.
yeah.
This
It,
one works.
and the problem is if you have a guy auto draft, Tucker's going to go in like the fucking eighth round. And
Hmm.
so you don't want to be taking a kicker that high, man.
Exactly.
All right. Well, yeah. So I didn't do kickers, and then you know me. I love me some Young Ho Koo, even though that's not how you say his name, but that's how we say his name.
Yeah, his name's Young Hoku. It's not Young
Yes,
Wei.
Young Wei, Young Ho.
I I asked an Asian friend of mine, and they said it's pronounced Ho.
Okay. Well, that's good. I trust you, and I trust your friend that I've never met
I
before.
just fucking made that up.
Okay. But I also like his prospects in that offense
Mhm.
because Ritter is an unproven commodity, which means they might be kicking a lot of field goals. And so, watch out for guys like that at kicker. There's not a lot of tricks up the sleeve, but that's one of them that you kind of keep an eye out for. So, um, and he's in a dome, which helps, and he's proven, which helps. All right, defense, James. Did you do defenses?
I did. And
Okay.
we'll just run through it real quick. I have a lot different than Yahoo. I have a lot of the same teams, a lot of different teams. So it's like
Sure.
half and half. So Yahoo has San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, Green Bay, Cincinnati, New England, then Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
So on me, I had number one the same, San Francisco. Then I had Dallas, then I had Buffalo, then I had Philadelphia.
Okay.
Philadelphia kind of dropped and Dallas went up because I like what I'm seeing on Dallas's defense, and Philadelphia, I'm concerned with some of the pieces they lost.
Sure.
They lost and the age of them. Then I have New England, New England, which it's Belichick. I think Belichick can do something with defense. The concern is Mac Jones and what he's going to actually do, and if they're turning the ball over a lot, that
Dude,
defense
New
might
England
get.
averaged 10.9 points per game last year as a defense. It had to be, it was higher than San Francisco. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think New England, they always sandbag, but they're always an overperformer in fantasy.
Yeah, and then I had the Jets, which is a 2, 3, 4, 5, which is right where Yahoo had them.
Okay.
Then I had the Ravens, and the reason why I bumped the Ravens up, this really deals with strength of schedule
Sure.
and defenses. I also think that the Ravens could get some of those return touchdowns based on the players they have on their special teams.
Okay.
Then I have Denver, and Denver's a risky proposition for me because I like a lot of what I see in Denver's defense, but what Russ is going to show up this year.
Yeah, if they're on the field the whole game, eventually they're going to get torched.
Yeah. Then I have Kansas City, and the thing with Kansas City, um, they're higher than Yahoo, lower than I would have thought initially, is because they score too quickly a lot of times, and the defense is gonna be on the field more.
Yeah. But, you know, when I was looking at Fantasy Pros, Kansas City was the number 6 defense last year on a points per game basis. And so
Hmm.
they're one of the teams that I feel like gets overlooked every year on defense, too. And so, yeah, for me, James, I think we had the top 5 the same, but tell me if I'm wrong. I had San Francisco, Dallas, Buffalo, Philly, New England.
Yep.
Okay, so you and I had the same top 5. Then I had Kansas City, Miami, New York Jets, Baltimore, and Jacksonville. And so Jacksonville was sneaky good last year as a defense. Um,
Oh, I
you
didn't
know,
get to 10. I had Pittsburgh 10.
okay, well, yeah, man, I don't know how I didn't have Pittsburgh in my top 10, but because
So, oh,
Pittsburgh is always at the top of the league in sacks, man.
yeah, I actually ranked out 11 because I sneakily I had the Saints and Pittsburgh tied at 10. And that's
Okay.
purely based on strength of schedule. I have to see more for Jacksonville. I could make the argument that they were like my below the line number, like right outside the top 10, because they do have a really easy schedule defensively, and they had a good year last year. I want to see them to be more consistent. Last year at the
For
beginning
sure.
of the season, their defense was not as good as it was at the end of the season, which
Yeah, and they were a surprise team. Now they're on everybody's radar. Usually it makes it harder.
yeah, it's like when I rank my defenses too, like Cleveland, the easiest schedules for defenses I had Jacksonville, Cleveland, Tennessee, and Atlanta
Okay.
as the four easiest schedules.
Well, that's
But
good to
like
hear
I
for
have,
Tennessee.
yeah, it's good to hear for Tennessee, but I have Tennessee at 25.
Yeah, because
I have
Tennessee doesn't have a lot going for them.
Yeah, I have Atlanta at 30. And that one, the reason Atlanta's so low is because I'm I'm optimistically concerned about Ritter, but they don't have as much talent on that defense, and they have a lot of new pieces coming in.
Hmm.
And and then Cleveland, I had Cleveland like the middle of the road and that has a lot to do with Watson. Like if Watson is Watson, then that defense will be closer to the top 10. Where if Watson's not Watson, I know he's always Watson, but you know what I mean. If he's Watson of old versus Watson of last year,
Yes.
then that's going to make or break that defense.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I mean, I'm good on all that, man. Is there anything that you want to hit on before we move to question of the week?
Let's hit on a trivia question for you. I saw this and it
Sure.
just clicked in my head.
Yeah.
Which QB has the longest active loss streak in starts, and how many is it?
The longest active loss streak
Yeah,
in
most consecutive
starts.
starts lost. Currently active, currently going. I'll give you a hint. It's not a starter.
It's not a starter. Oh my gosh. You're like totally racking my brain right now. I don't even know. I don't even know where to go, man. It's not a starter. Is it is it Nick Foles?
No.
Okay. Is it it's not Jacoby Brissett. He actually did okay. Um
Now I just lost his first name in my head.
I don't know, man. The only other one I could think of that would even be in that category would be like Gardner Minshew. I'm trying to think of other backups that have actually had some starts.
So I will give you another hint.
Yeah, give me a
He
hint, man.
went to Michigan State.
Oh, he went to Michigan State. You're not talking about fucking Hoyer, are you?
I am.
When is the last time he started a game?
It's still an active loss streak as a starter.
Okay, okay.
He's lost his last 12 consecutive starts.
Dude, we're
And
talking old man Hoyer, dude.
the last time he started a game was 2022 in New England.
Okay.
He
All right.
lost.
So yeah, so he started a
2020.
game last year. Okay.
Yeah. So the last win he had was 2016 with Chicago. He's lost his last 12 consecutive starts.
You're giving me like the most garbage trivia ever, okay? And you're bashing a Michigan State guy, which is horrible for you to do. Come on, man. What do you expect out of Hoyer? He's old, he's been a career backup, and I don't even know what else to say.
I will say this. It is fucking impressive that he's still in the fucking league, being undrafted. I'm sorry, I almost said drafted. Start coming in as an undrafted free agent in 2009. So he's going into his 15th season.
It's the high IQ, okay? I've heard it throughout the years. He has an incredibly high quarterback IQ that coaches want him holding that clipboard, helping to coach the starting quarterback from the bench. And that's the only reason, because I've seen him play. His arm is garbage. It's purely intelligence, James. That is it, man.
Yeah. So in 2021, he was on the practice squad in New England at one time, and then it's just like, how the hell is he still in
Yeah.
the league?
He just hung in there forever, man. Um, and all right, so question of the week time. Let's do this.
All right.
So we're talking fantasy, and we were talking tight ends, and the ADP for Travis Kelce right now on Yahoo is 7. Okay, and so my question for you, James, and it's a loaded one, is that if you're picking in the late first round, do you consider him? Because you've got a couple different camps. Some camps say you got to get a running back or a top flight wide receiver in the first round, and you always wait on your tight end. Some camps say you take the best value regardless. You got to let the board fall to you, and you just see where it goes. And I always give you my answer first. And you played with me long enough that it's probably not any surprise to you. But I believe that if that's the position you're in and he's there at the end of the first round, you can take him for a few reasons. We're in a keeper league, and so that makes it a lot easier because, if we're doing our homework right year in and year out, we probably have like foundational wide receivers and running backs that we're building off of anyhow. So there's less pressure to take one in the first round. But even if you're in a regular league, when you look at his points per game, last year he had 3 points per game higher than the number 2 tight end. He had five fucking points per game higher than the number 3 tight end, James. You will not have any kind of drop off like that at quarterback, running back, or wide receiver. And when you can only start one guy at tight end, you have to seriously consider taking him if you're there. If you're picking top 5, I'd probably say no way. You got to take a running back or one of the top wide receivers. But if you're picking like 8, 9, 10, something like that, I think you got to consider it. And then me historically, I've done it. I've taken Kelce in the first round. I've taken Gronk in the first round. Obviously, I man crush on Gronk for many years. But you have to look at the value and you have to look at the drop off in points. If that's the position you're in, do it and don't think twice about it. But if you don't do it, that's fine. Just fucking wait until the end of the draft and get your tight end. That's just how I look at it, man. What do you think?
I know you're ready for me to disagree with you.
Well, you don't always disagree, but tell me
I
what
100% agree with you.
Okay.
100%, because you're looking at 7. It's like, let's say you're at 8 and he's not picked. We'll just use 8 for an example, and you're in a 10-team league. So right around there on ADP, then you're looking at, so it's what, 9, 10. If you're 8, you're picking 13. So right there with ADP, you have a couple people that have question marks. Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley. There's some big, huge question marks with them.
Yep.
You have, then right after, like, you have Hill, Tyreek Hill, and Cooper Kupp, and then Nick Chubb. So looking right in there, you have some people that have some serious question marks. Are they coming back healthy? Are they going to play? Is their talent going to translate to the NFL? Then after that, you're coming back with Jacobs. Yeah, he may sit out, and there might be a question mark, but he's clearly a focal point of that offense. Stephon Diggs, Derrick Henry, that you can get your running back or your wide receiver in there, but the issue then is coming back because then you don't have a pick till
you're now at
20, 28.
Yep.
So then you're looking wide receiver wise, you're still looking good with like you're looking at like Jalen Waddle
Yeah, are
or
you going to have a 5 point drop off at wide receiver or running back by waiting? You're not.
exactly like Jalen Waddle, T Higgins, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith. Like you're looking in there. I'm looking at it and it's crazy to me that Mark Andrews' ADP is right in that range too.
Yep.
Which is fucking wild.
I know, man. I know. The tight end thing is like so perplexing in fantasy. And every year, it's almost like in the real draft, there's like a run up on quarterbacks, you know? In
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, there's like this sort of like artificial run up on tight ends where people think, oh, there's fucking 6 or 7 good tight ends this year. And there's only ever maybe 2 or 3. And so really it's Kelsey in a league of his own, and then the number 2 and the number 3 guy, they're like in a tier down, like drastically down, just clearly above everybody from there. And so it just, the tight end thing,
Right.
it's always a mess, man.
So you could do your tight end, then get a receiver like Diggs or Adams or CeeDee Lamb, then come back at 28 and get like Stevenson or Najee Harris, who could have good years, or Kenneth Walker, who had a good year last year, and then you're coming back after that and getting another wide receiver with like Olave or Devonta Smith. So I mean,
You're
yeah,
getting
you
more
could do
value.
it
You're
at
getting more value.
seven, eight, nine. I would do it.
Yeah.
Anything before 7, you're there's a bigger drop off on what you would get.
Yeah, there's just too good a talent at those higher premium positions, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, like at 6 is a question mark. So anything above 6,
Okay.
it's you have the higher. So you have like the top 5 with McCaffrey, Jefferson. I'm just looking at ADP. McCaffrey, Jefferson, Chase, Eckler. There's 4, top 4.
Okay.
And then Taylor's, there's a question mark. So at five, I would consider a
That's the
possibility.
earliest you consider Kelsey.
That's the earliest I would consider Kelsey because at
Okay.
5, you're still coming back and getting decent
Yeah.
talent. Like
But you
you're
do
getting,
consider it. But you do
yeah,
consider it. And
like
and
you
you
could
know,
get
you might
Henry and then
yeah, and you might get like we see this almost every year in one league or another. Somebody goes crazy and takes like Mahomes in the first round. Okay. Well, and that helps drop some of those running backs and wide receivers to you when you come back around to get them, which makes it even, you know, it makes it even better for you to take Kelsey early on because you're still going to get better than what you think on the board because some jackass is going to reach for like Mahomes or somebody else. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It just goes in your favor if you do decide to take Kelsey early.
yeah. So this year might be the first year in my other league that I don't have Mahomes
Okay.
because how the other league is structured with the keeper is like it's based on ranking,
Gotcha.
like the Yahoo ranking for the league, and I have to seriously look at it because we're looking at closer to a second round pick for him, where I've been getting him for like a fourth, fifth round pick,
Yeah.
keeping him.
Bargain.
I've been getting him for a bargain, and when you're looking at a second round pick, that's kind of it's pushing it a little bit for me, but so I'll have to seriously look at it
I hear you, man.
for the
I
first
hear you.
time.
Yeah, because you might be able to just do your draft, and who knows, maybe they slide and you get them in the third, and then it worked out in your favor. Or you wait and you get Hurts or Josh Allen in the fourth. You know, like it's always better to just be patient and let the board come to you. That's like what they
Yeah,
say in the NFL draft, and it holds true in fantasy, man. Don't go fucking crazy and jump up, but you know, just remember it is a game, and so if you want to go crazy and jump up, well then just fucking do it because it's a game. So
yeah. I would say the other thing is don't fucking auto draft and
yeah, don't auto draft.
don't. Although last year in my other league I auto drafted and
Well, Yahoo is going to give you a good auto draft team. It's
yeah,
just that you don't get as committed to your team because you didn't pick them.
yeah. So last year I had to auto draft in my other league, and I think my first loss was week 10.
Yeah, you were rolling, man.
Yeah, and I ended up losing in the finals.
Gotcha. All right, well, that's our question of the week. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got for tonight, man. You got any closing thoughts there, James?
No, I think that's all I had.
All right, well, hey, so yeah, for anybody who's watching, we hope you like the show. Hit us up for Name That Stadium. Definitely answer that question of the week. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We do this every week. And yeah, James, like always, man, it was a good time. I'll catch you later, buddy.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one. See ya.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut, hut, hike.